by the Ghana Revenue Authority, Goel Company Limited, Serene Insurance, Ghana Link Network Services, and Meridian Port Services MPS. The show is proudly powered by the Ghana Ports and Harbours Authority-GPHA. Our media partner is the Business and Financial Times, and so if you have to, all you have to do is to grab the Thursday edition of the BNFT, and you'll be able to see all that happened here on the show this afternoon. We are streaming live on our social media pages. On Facebook, we are streaming live at Ghana Ports and Harbours Authority, Ghana Ports and Harbours Authority. Still on Facebook, we are streaming live at Port of Tema. And on YouTube, we are streaming live at Eye on Port. Indeed, we shall be getting interactive with you, and so all you have to do is send us your messages and comments ahead via our dedicated WhatsApp line, which is 0559-019-177. 0559-019-177. At the appropriate time, we shall share it with the rest of the world. We shall also be activating the phone lines along the line for you to call in and contribute to the discussion. My name is Kennedy Mona. We are going for a quick break. When we bounce back, we will continue the show. Please do stay with us.
Every now and again, Goel makes good things happen. This time, Goel has introduced Super XP Ron 95, a higher grade fuel loaded with additives and yet sold at the same price as normal fuel. Goel Super XP Ron 95 enhances engine performance like never before. It maintains the engine by keeping it clean from carbon deposits. Goel Super XP Ron 95 is designed to burn slowly and thus improves fuel economy, making you save money after several kilometers. Goel Super XP Ron 95 gives you a smooth driving experience, that is, less vibrations. Fill up with Goel Super XP Ron 95. Now there's no need to pay more for any higher grade fuel. Goel has that sorted. Goel, good energy.
Electricity, then pay your taxes. Our taxes, our future.
Because you see, without our taxes, we wouldn't have good roads, good schools, better hospitals, street lights, and other very important social amenities. When we pay our taxes, we give our children free and quality education. Talga, my money too small. Why should I pay my tax? Look, small. Salifo, it doesn't matter how small or big your business or income is. You still have to pay your taxes. The little taxes from each and every one of us, when put together, could give your community clean water. Or that deprived school with tables and chairs. Please pay your taxes. It is your responsibility. It is your civic duty. It is the law.
Impressive factory. If only I had listened to you, I wouldn't have been in this mess. That devastating fire virtually wiped out the whole factory and my warehouse.
Remember my misfortunes last year? Serene Insurance Asset All Risk Fire policy that I took were there to pay for my damaged stocks in the warehouse. And my machines that were affected by the flood have been replaced. My accident vehicle is back on the road thanks to Serene Insurance motor policy. Currently, my goods are on the high seas, covered with their marine cargo insurance policy. I was just telling Ajima about Serene Insurance.
Oh, Ajima,
tell him more.
As a road contractor,
I make sure I do my contractors all risk insurance
for the projects and then workers' compensation for all the workers on site. With Serene Insurance, they will make sure they will cover your unknown tomorrow today.
Serene Insurance, a new face of insurance. Call us now.
MPS Terminal 3 is Africa's new state-of-the-art container terminal at Tema Port. For manufacturers, agro-processors and traders, the new port means business can be done faster. This infrastructure boost will improve Ghana's port handling capacity, connect more trading routes, and oil the engine of growth for the economy, creating greater opportunities across all sectors as Africa's markets merge and become the largest trading bloc globally. MPS, we connect, you thrive.
All right, so welcome back. We bring you this special message, New Year message from the Director General of the Ghana Ports and Harbours Authority. Let's take a look at it.
on this occasion of the beginning of the year 2023, it is my honor on behalf of the Ghana Ports and Harbours Authority, Board of Directors and Management and all staff, to wish everyone within the port community, the staff of Ghana Ports and Harbours Authority, our board, our stakeholders, customs, shipping lines, shipping agents, freight forwarders, and our cherished importers and exporters, and all major public sector institutions that are supporting the Port Authority to deliver cargo services to our economy. I wish all of us a very, very, very prosperous 2023. We are looking forward to a year that will be better than 2022. We have all been unfortunate to witness 2022, where the global economy has been in crisis, and Ghana has also been affected. We noticed a decline in cargo traffic to our ports, but we've been able to survive the year. And we believe with all the efforts government is making to reposition our economy, 2023 is going to be a better one for the ports, a better one for importers and exporters, and a better one for our country. Happy New Year, and all the best for the coming year.
All right, you're welcome back. It's now time for us to take a look at happenings in the port and shipping industry on the global stage.
Israel's Haifa port has been officially taken over by a consortium headed by India's Adani Group. The privatization conclusion comes on the back of the acquisition of the necessary approvals from Israeli's governmental bodies. A consortium of Adani Port and Special Economic Zone Limited and Israel's Gadot Group won the tender to privatize the port of Haifa in July 2022. The consortium's offer totals $1.15 billion, beating other 18 applicants for the port. Under the deal, the Adani Gadot Consortium has secured the rights to buy 100% shares of Haifa Port Company Limited, which operates the port of Haifa. The consortium won a concession to operate the port until 2050. The European Commission has given its approval for a €1.1 billion scheme to support the rollout of carbon capture and storage technologies in Denmark. The aid will be awarded through a competitive tendering procedure open to companies active in an industrial sector, including the waste and energy sectors, with conclusion to take place this year. The maximum amount will be equal to €54.9 million per year, adjusted to inflation. Under a 20-year contract, the beneficiary will capture and store an annual minimum of 0.4 million tons of carbon dioxide as from 2026. The aid will cover the difference between the estimated total cost of capturing and storing a ton of carbon dioxide over the lifetime of the contract and the return expected by the beneficiary. According to the European Commission, Denmark committed to ensuring that the aid delivers overall carbon dioxide reductions and that it does not merely displace the emissions from one sector to another. The measure is expected to increase investor confidence in CCS technology, reduce cost for future application of CCS technologies, and facilitates the development of a commercial CCS market in Denmark.
You're welcome back. Those were happenings in the port and shipping industry on the global stage. We're now taking the word of the day, and remember, the word of the day is designed to bring you up to speed with the jargons and terminologies in the shipping industry. Today's word is cargo traffic. Cargo traffic.
Cargo throughput is the total volume of cargo discharged and loaded at the port. It includes break bulk, liquid bulk, dry bulk, containerized cargo, transit cargo, and transshipment.
All right, so welcome back. We are zooming into our discussion proper tonight, and tonight we're taking a look at the role of the Council of Ministers in the implementation of the Africa Continental Free Trade Area. Now, the Council of Ministers plays a very crucial role in this whole arrangement, And you realize that our Minister for Trade, the Honorable Alan Kojo-Chiramanting, was a part of this particular council, and he had to exit along the line just recently to take part in the ruling party's presidential primaries, which he's fervently campaigning for election as a flag bearer. Now, our understanding on Iron Port is that there are 2 other ministers in other African countries that may also exit along the line. And so we're taking a look at what role they played, how this whole arrangement in terms of the Council of Ministers is going to be impacted as far as the AfCFTA implementation is concerned. And so we are privileged this afternoon to have in our studios Mr. Louis Yao-Afol. Mr. Louis Yao-Afol is the Executive Director of the AfCFTA Policy Network, APN. He is with us in the studios. We shall also be joined via Zoom by Mr. Judson Vendel Adi, who is the chairman of the Africa Private Sector Summit. Along the line, he will join us via Zoom for this all-important discussion. So let me begin with you, Mr. Yao-Afol, and say Happy New Year.
My pleasure, and many happy returns to you.
Yes, and let me remind viewers that we are starting today's show a bit earlier because of the CHAN tournament, which is currently ongoing, and there are some matches that will be played right after our show today, and so we just have to come here at 2 p.m., do this till 3, when we would hand over to the Metro TV crew to show the matches that have been lined up for today's CHAN tournament. I just want to find out from you, first of all, how AfCFTA is doing, in terms of the phases of implementation that we have seen so far.
Yeah, I think good afternoon to your viewers and Happy New Year to them.
Yes.
I think that overall, I think they are still making inroads. Many countries are picking up the model, picking up the implementation approach. I think the major one that we all experienced was just this Christmas, around September, October, when we all experienced the guided trade.
Right.
I think that was very important.
Yes.
And then I think also that just the past January 1st or 7th was the 3 years now since trading was commenced.
Yes.
And we still have to find out more whether more borders have been opened, whether more custom procedures have been flexible.
Right.
I think we're still waiting on more data on this. But so far, so good. I think you and I in Ghana will realize that Ghana has been pushing and advocating more. But my more happiness has to do with the fact that more private sector participation is growing day by day.
Yeah.
Private sector is growing day by day. And I want to use this opportunity to say that it's of good news to hear that the academia has taken it up. And so you realize the University of Ghana will be hosting the annual 74th annual New Year School. And the whole team is on the continental freedom. So once the academia also takes off like that, you realize that the education, the sensitization becomes very holistic.
All right. So from your point of view and that of APN, you are satisfied so far with this happening, the current situation of AfCFTA?
I won't say I'm satisfied, but it's progressive.
Right.
Progressive. We've not been able to have more data on the rest of the member states. I am concerned about certain security implications that reared its head, which are having, quote-unquote, serious dire consequences on trade, especially if you take Morocco and Algeria. And it's even has been played in football.
Yeah.
Mind you, if we take services under the Continental Free Trade, we have sports and cultural service. Assuming that was in full play, you could imagine currently Morocco decided to abandon the current tournament because Algeria has not given them the airspace.
Yes.
So you see, you could see security implications playing along trade. And so my concern has been in recent development, the sub-region has experienced so many checkered security issues. And I think we have to look at that because it's really have a cast negative impact on the implementation itself. How do you cross a border when the border is closed? How do you do it?
Right.
And that is what we have to look. Ghana is bounded by Burkina Faso. If there are insecurity, I just read this morning or yesterday that most of their people are influxing our country. So how do you trade? So my concern has been at that side, where security has, insecurity a bit has reared its head. And I think that trade officials and then political heads must really find solution to it as soon as possible.
Has there been any changes with respect to the number of countries that have ratified, or we still have the same number that we announced previously?
I think it still stands around the 44, 45.
Okay.
Yes, and no more. But the worry is that you still have South Africa, who is a full state party, but still have not accepted opening up the customs to AfCFTA products.
Right.
A big player, a big industry player, a big economy. Permit me to read something. Very, very important. First of all, who are they? The Council of Ministers of AfCFTA are drawn from, they are the ministers of trade,
right,
who represent the various AfCFTA countries or state parties. That council is composed of not only the trade ministers, but technocrats, technical people, trade experts who are part of that.
Right.
And they are drawn, I think, from either the secretariat or other, but that is it. And then they have another one also that, you see, these AfCFTA members, they are those who have state parties, that is, they've gone through all the process and become full AfCFTA country members.
Right.
So they have their trade ministers one side. Then also have those who are in the process of ratifying. They are not there yet. They also have their ministers. But the Council of Ministers, you look at this, the trade ministers and experts also drawn from, so that they, and that is the way it looks. And the composition is these two. Then what is their role? A critical role. If you look at the architecture of the AfCFTA agreement, apart from the agreement, that is the first layer, then you come to the protocols, then you come to the annexes. If you look at it critically, you look at the strategy, you realize that at the apex, the pyramid, is the heads of states. They oversee everything.
Right.
So at extraordinary meetings, everything that has been discussed is submitted to them for approval or disapproval before implementation.
Yes.
The next to them are the ministers of trade. So they are the Council of Ministers.
Right.
So the trade ministers more or less act like liaison between the heads of states and then the secretariat.
Right.
So whatever that, one, they look at reports. What are the reports that the secretariat have so far?
Right.
And we look at the report, then they also report back to the heads of state. And a very important role so that they play is they give directives. They can decide, in fact, if they give directives, they can decide to give directives that they meet and say, look, we feel that this is not going well this way, this is not going well, we feel that we have to go this way. But that cannot be implemented unless they, after that meeting, submit that directive or recommendation to the heads of states for adoption. A critical example is when this protocol, which was not, it's not a protocol yet, but it is surely going to be women and youth in trade. It was not part of the traditional agreement. Yeah. But during conversations here and there, like debate was ongoing, and then the ministers felt, look, let us table it before the heads of state.
Right.
So that was tabled at extraordinary summit, and they felt, okay, let us start the conversation. So that is how it looks like. And then I think one of the critical other roles has to do with they also look at reviews, not just report and that, they review. And it's important. If they feel after 5 years, in fact, the exit clause in the agreement is that after 5 years, a country can exit.
Right.
They look at, they can review in terms of the recruitments, finance.
Right.
So they can look at all that. So they play a very critical role. And so they are more like, if you take the Secretary General out, who is more or less at the capacity as assistant or deputy AUC chairperson.
Yeah, okay.
All the rest of the people who are the secretariat, I would say that, yes, the Council of Ministers play a very critical role. And my more concern has to do with the other non-ministers of trade who form that council.
Yes.
And so this is what they do. And they do other internal activities that, and the good things at any time they can decide to say, look, we feel we are not happy about implementation process or the pace at which it's moving. They will meet. And they are supposed to meet, I think, twice a year.
Okay.
So they can decide to meet. And then when they do recommendations, and I'm happy that most of the recommendations that they've passed, I think the current Secretary General is ensuring that the Secretariat is implementing. And that is very, very welcoming.
Right. Okay, so let's take a look at the element of continuity as far as the AfCFTA arrangement is concerned, and the change in, political landscape of the various countries. How does this affect continuity?
It is, I mean, this is a very important question that
political changes,
you have asked. If you take a critical look at Ghana's case, where the trade minister resigned,
yes,
until you are a stakeholder, you wouldn't know the impact. If you take Honorable Alan Chimantin critically, he was not just a policy head. Most of the ministers are policy heads to ensure that they implement what the party lines and government manifestos and what have you. But he was beyond that. He was technical person of trade. I'm not holding brief for it, but that is what I'm in that industry. So I know he was at the 8th Africa Trade Policy Center. And that is a wing of the ECA, Economic Community of Africa, under UN.
Yes.
They shape continental trade policies. So he was there. And that was where he was trying to, apply for the World Trade WTO some time ago.
Yes, yes.
Then, after that side, he came down. So he had initial technical expertise in the whole AfCFTA process.
Right.
So you can put a trade minister there of a different background, but when it comes to a certain cause which their technical expertise is needed, there will be an impact.
Right.
And for me, his side, there will be impact because they have to get somebody who have the full technical expertise that he had in the course of the AfCFTA implementation. Else, it will slow the implementation process and the drive that Ghana is leading. And it's very important. I'm not talking about political twist to this one. This is the fact. Remember that he was also one of the architects, pioneers of this whole dream.
Right. Yes. Yes.
You can't take it from him.
Yes.
Others contributed, the likes of Honorable Spiugabra and the likes, but he was very, very instrumental because, as I said, he was at the Africa Trade Policy, which looked at all continental trade policies. So when you are bringing another person on board, apart from the trade negotiators, Ghana have chief negotiator. These are technical people who negotiate on behalf of the country. So if the minister, obviously, if it works that way, to me, if it worked that way, if the minister is not there, I know deputies are good, they're there. If there's a deputy who has that technical expertise, it's good. If not, you can look within and see, because this whole thing is about export-driven, import-driven. So, for example, if you look into Ghana, I'm just making my opinion. You could look at the CEO of the Ghana Export.
Promotion Authority. She's
done a lot. She has the expertise in that. She has also been part of this AfCFTA staff. You look at also the former CEO of Free Zones. Who is also an MP and deputy. Ochebefi. That field, the Free Zones has a kind of similarity with the whole process of this AfCFTA. Economic zones. So, and then if not...
He's a deputy...
They are not minister. Deputies. No, but he's a deputy.
Yeah, he's a deputy, yes.
So if you're not looking at this book, then the chief negotiators, the chief trade negotiators of the ministries of trade should be the people who could be caretakers of this process of implementation.
Right.
And so, for example, if you go to Ministry of Trade, you could talk about Mr. Mixon.
Mixon.
So
yes.
ideally, if I'm to advise the president, I say, Mr. President, in the meantime, apart from the chief director of the Ministries of Trade,
right.
the chief trade negotiators of your country should be the ones to make sure they hold the after-driven goal, because they have been part from day one. Yeah. They went to negotiate what we are giving out and what we're taking in. So right. It is very important, because when these critical people are not there, implementation becomes hold up.
Right.
Because they knew beyond the policy, the technical expertise because I remember the Alan Chomantin, he came out with 7 clusters for Ghana. Right. Until today, among the about 45 or 44 party states, I've not come across any country yet with a national policy on AfCFTA. Ghana is among the first to launch its national policy on AfCFTA. Yeah. And so I could tell you what I'm saying. So Nigeria is a big player, but they don't have. So you need to have a continuity policy of expertise when you are really having a continental program like AfCFTA of that kind of nature. And for example, if you look at Kenya, before the current minister, the immediate past, Honorable Maina,
yes,
played very key instrumental role with the continental free trade. Currently, Nigeria, they will be having elections in February. So, obviously, the current minister, Honorable Aisha,
yes,
will also be phasing out. Who continues? And this is the question I think you have been asking. And so I think that it's very, very imperative for us to really take a look and beyond policy, look to critical technical experts within the ministries of trade, not only in Ghana, who can continue with the young African baby dream of the African Continental Free Trade Agreement. It is very, very imperative. It's very, very important.
All right. So let me find out from you, in terms of having, could it be that because Ghana houses the AfCFTA Secretariat here, that perhaps was what spurred us on to come up with a national AfCFTA policy, which we rightly said no other country has followed suit since Ghana, did that. Is it because we have the Secretariat here?
That's a good point, a question you've asked. The question is, we decided to bid for it. It wasn't like it was imposed on us. We bid it.
Right.
There were 7 countries that bid it.
Yes.
And we went through the process. And Ghana met certain criteria. There were criteria to be met.
Right.
Good governance, number 1. And for me, I'm not campaigning for anybody, but I've always been very vocal. I remember when our network was also doing behind the scenes campaign for the country. We were not paid for that anyway.
Yes.
And I was trying to find out from some of the trade negotiators, the chief negotiators, not from Ghana, the chances of Ghana winning.
Right.
Because our members also influence their members within countries. So we're urging them to consider Ghana. And I remember the former chief negotiator of Nigeria, may he so rest in peace. I remember him. He said, look, Ghana stand a chance of winning because of the good governance our president is championing. That was what he told me.
Okay.
So good governance. Then a certain infrastructure, education. You are going to have a staff of about 300 people coming from all over Africa. Their children are supposed to go to school. Do you have the education infrastructure?
Yeah.
Then they inspected other facilities.
Right.
So it was beyond just governance and infrastructure. Do we have it? So they went to the schools. Then they looked at our road network. Then they looked at other conditions. So we met all these ones. And it was still very stiff competition. With the likes of Egypt, the likes of SA, and then Ghana. And then eventually we won. Now, to your question. When you have, after winning such a huge regional office, and remember, Ghana, we don't have a regional office when you look at the AU structure.
Right.
I stand to be correct, but we don't have. You have the African Development Bank, I think in Cote d'Ivoire, the African Court somewhere, but we don't have. So it was a plus for us to go for that regional office. Then secondly, the reason why that cushion us to be more determined is that if you look at the ripple, the multiply effect of having AfCFTA here, you have to be serious.
Right.
Because all the other countries who didn't win, they wish they had because they know. It's just like hosting a World Cup.
Yes.
Every week, you're going to have regional meetings. And you know the meaning of that? Hotels.
Yeah, sure.
Your transportation system. People are going to have pay.
Yeah.
Schools, they are going to pay foreign currency. Tourism, they have to go certain sites.
Yeah, sure.
So every week, and then aviation. So that is just one. Then secondly, it's like the Wall Street of Africa. So investors were now looking at the environment was ripe. And that was why I'm happy that the GIPC caught the vision quickly.
Yes.
And decided to run alongside with the Ministry of Trading. I'm talking about Ghana here.
Yes.
I also developed something for the Nigerian Ministry of Trade on tourism and investment before COVID hits. And they wanted to ask, they wanted me to do a kind of a broad technical profile on how they could go about. At that time, they have not come up with their plan. Right. And after that time, we were moving a bit. And they were looking at how they can connect tourism to investment and trade. These two go together. So you realize that GIPC positioned itself well. Then Ghana Export Promotion positions itself well. And you realize that Ghana Export Promotion developed what they call the National Export Development Strategy to make sure that they can add more exportable products. And so, yes, we looked at all this and realized that then if we could fulfill the agenda, what do you call it, beyond the aid, the year of return, and all these, then Ghana should do. And especially, we also realized that we were taking seriousness to agribusiness. And it was Ghana realized that, look, if we do, we'll be able to connect industrialization through agribusiness and offer jobs to the youth, teeming youth. So I think Ghana decided to put this, and at the time too, I think we were determined with infrastructure. If you remember, our road network issues started picking up just around the same time that we were bidding. We're expanding ports, and even the office itself.
Right.
Ghana offered $10 million as a seed for the office.
Yes.
Yes. $10 million as the seed for the office, the secretariat. And Ghana was also a caretaker of the place.
Right.
I remember that our network was consulted along the line to help support with consultancy in referring experts when they wanted to have caretaker, technocrats to work, staff, let me put it, recruitment. So we offered some people because all this was born by the by the host.
Right.
Yes, and I hope it's playing because if you look outside Africa, everybody points to where the secretariat is. Ghana.
Yes.
And this is where I think that we didn't lose at all. But my only concern is that I think that very soon most of the offices at the secretariat needs to be relocated.
Right.
So that the secretariat can have a full access to the whole building.
Okay. All right. So let me at this juncture go to Mr. Judson Wendell Ade, who is the chairman of the Africa Private Sector Summit. He's joined us via Zoom. I understand he's been on for some time now. Good afternoon. If you're in the U.S., I'm sure it should be morning around this time.
Yes, indeed, it is. Good morning.
Absolutely. Good to have you, sir.
It's a pleasure.
Yes. I know you would have heard that Ghana's Trade Minister, the Honorable Lankwadwo Kyerematen, has resigned, for obvious reasons. I just want to find out from you what your initial reaction was when you heard that he had to bow out, this capacity to go and pursue other interests. How did you take the news?
His role in giving birth to AfCFTA is one of continental value. Excuse my voice. Is one of continental value.
Right.
And so one has to look at it from that context, those of us that are involved at the Pan-African level. What's the implication for the continent and beyond? And what mechanism do we have in place for those with the kind and quality of experience that he brings to the table? How do we maybe revisit the Ministerial Council and to put in place maybe an advisory committee that would work with the Ministerial Council for particularly the newcomers? Louis just mentioned, made reference to the former minister of Kenya, for example.
Yes.
Okay, and there's this young fellow, Prudence. Prudence is still within the system. He's young and all of that. You have another young fellow who helped recently in helping Ghana structure the AfCFTA program. So where do you put these technocrats outside of the norm, that is the Ministerial Council, or when they're no longer within the workings of the AfCFTA and other organizations? Because, Africa's problem has to do with continuity.
Yes.
All right? Can we afford to lose the light of Alan at this point in time? Well, he has a choice. And so we cannot confine him or restrict him to be where he is or where he's living. But I think it is important that we begin to look at the importance of continuity going forward so that people like him, all right, assuming he wins, it's a different ball game. But assuming he doesn't win, do you not provide for some role that he continues to play in an advisory role beyond that of being Minister of Trade?
Right. So you had Mr. Affol's submission in terms of the issue of political changes and what that has, the tendency it has in terms of impacting the current implementation of AfCFTA. I just want to find out from you, from your perspective, what are some of the things that we can do to curtail some of these things?
What are some of the things we can do?
Yes.
That is a tough one.
Okay.
Tough from the standpoint is very political and maybe sensitive. But in my view, all right, in the case of the Ministerial Council, we should make a decision to set up an advisory board.
Right.
All right, Ministerial Council, so that we have experts like him leaving. All right, they can continue to serve the continent in that capacity. I think that is the easiest solution.
Right. Okay, so I know that your organization has been at the forefront of championing private sector participation in trade. And that's, for example, the AfCFTA arrangement. I just want to find out from you, when it comes to regional and sub-regional trade, what is your assessment of the participation of, private sector? Are we there?
Unfortunately, I would say we're not there yet. We're making some progress, but we're not there yet. One must appreciate things that are taking place right now with respect to AfCFTA, the various programs, the support they have from the various institutions, Afri-Exim Bank, the agriculture, EDB, focusing on agriculture, and Africa Trade Insurance, focusing on the trade insurance for the continent. Now, we at there are probably 3 or 4 layers of when it comes to private sector concerns. At the national level, we are fragmented. We have too many organizations at the national level representing the private sector. We have at the regional levels, we may have probably 2 organizations. For example, in the West African belt, we have the Francophone group, and we have FAWASI. FAWASI covers all of the the African countries.
Right.
Okay. Now there's effort to set up the regional body, which technically should be made up of the of Hawassi and Fopakwa, I think that's the name of the organization, or from the French group, all right, that will represent the regional body. Then we have the Pan-African bodies, all right. For now, we know very specifically the Pan-African Chamber of Commerce and Industry, all right, that was established in 2009 to represent the private sector at the African Union. Unfortunately, we're only giving an observer status. I'm sorry, an MOU was signed, but we're not giving the status that was requested. And most recently, probably I think it was 2018, 2019, thereabout, by resolution, the heads of states came about a resolution to establish the African Business Council. All right. The AU invited all of the private sector members to attend a meeting. And out of that, we now have the African Business Council. So what we're trying to do now is explore how we can galvanize all of these bodies, one, to strengthen the private sector at the country level. If we can achieve that, bingo, everything else will fall in place. It means that you have a strong voice at the regional level, and you will have a strong voice at the Pan-African, the Pan-African stroke at the AU level.
Yeah.
But we're fragmented. And so our focus is try to see how best we can bring these organizations together, all right, so that collectively, at the region, at the country level, at the continent, at the regional level, and at the continental level, we speak with one voice, all right? You know, because if we truly want to implement AfCFTA, you have to have a strong, vibrant, independent private sector.
Yeah.
Right? In the absence of that, we will not work. So what one step further, what we have looked at is that, okay, fine. We have been fortunate that the heads of states, and I'm not political, I like to be frank.
Yes.
The signing of the AfCFTA was not a willing arrangement by all of the leaders. Many of the leaders had to call their colleagues and ask them, please sign this. It is in the interest of the continent. If it were not so, we would not have problem implementing the protocols today.
Right.
Okay? So what we're saying is that since the leaders have signed these protocols and implanted in these protocols free movement of people, common currency, and a number of other things, all we're asking them to do is honor the signatures so that the protocols will be implemented. And with the assistance of the UNECA, we've come up with a draft document where we look at the protocols with like various laws across the world, for that matter, all right, whether it has to do with WTO, whether it has to do with EU and so forth. And we've come up with a series of recommendations, all right, that are needed to accelerate the implementation of the AfCFTA program.
Right.
You know, in this case, I will mention the REX protocols as well as the AfCFTA. All right, the AfCFTA protocols derive largely from the REX protocols. But so trade barriers. Who are affected by trade barriers? The private sector.
Right.
Who needs to trade? Louis mentioned earlier about trade facilitation, border issues. You cannot talk about Ghana, cannot talk about doing trade with Benin. If there's trade unrest, there's political unrest in the Togo. These are the practical things that the Bill of Rights calls for. We need peace and security.
Yeah.
We need common currency. We need free movement of people. We need to participate on the check and balances at the borders. Okay?
Yes.
An illiterate person should be able to cross any border with their goods without having to be able to read and write. As simple as that. Okay? Even using some color code system. So we need to remove all of these bottlenecks so that trade, so that Africa can truly transform. Now, what we're also talking about, Africa needs its own data. Most of the data we use today are imported data. You do not have your own data. Put your universities to work. Put your specialists to work so that Africa can come up with its own data that the private sector can utilize and so forth. Now, in particular reference to this, where are we on mapping our natural resources? And I know time is against us, but let me leave one salient point here.
Yes.
Everyone rushing to Africa for gold. The only difference here is that the people who are rushing to Africa for gold are not Africans. Everybody, all of the other places developing or have in place their gold reserve. Where is ours? Let's use what Kagame say. They print our currency and they say it is worthless. It's not my saying, it's another president saying. Why do we have weak currencies across Africa when we have gold and other minerals? Right? Lithium, I understand, now goes for $78,000 or more. There's something else that just came up that goes for, I think, a couple of $1 million for just a small batch of it.
Right.
Okay, that recently found in Nigeria. So we need more Dangotes.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
We need to transform the natural resources of the continent on the continent so that we can create the jobs. The underlying reasons why people are not providing, people have some of the restrictions on free movement of people is simply because the government are obligated to providing jobs for the people. Right. So if you have influx of people coming into the country, it creates more problem for the sitting government. So I think if we begin to look at transforming our natural resources, we'll create it and on good terms, not on these basic concession agreements where you have royalties of 3% or 5% of those kinds of things. We have graduated from that. You have the gavel in your hand, make a difference in your concession agreements, particularly the likes of the GIPC. I've had lengthy conversations with the head of GIPC on this kind of issue. Yes. We must transfer the natural resources to provide the skill sets, to provide the jobs that we need. We must transform our educational system, provide the skill sets we need for the continent.
All right. I'll come back to you, Mr. Vendel. But I will go to Louise now. When I come back to you, I want to find out from you how we can empower the private sector to actively and efficiently, effectively participate in this whole AfCFTA arrangement. But let me come to you and find out. You heard his submission in terms of, the structuring of the Council of Ministers in AfCFTA. I want to find out from you how you think that the structure should be going forward so that we don't suffer, so much.
Let me, thank you very much. Let me read some Article 11 of the AfCFTA agreement. It says that the Council of Ministers is hereby established and shall consist of the ministers responsible for trade or such other ministers, authorities, or officials duly designated by the state parties. Right from the word go, it is all government affair.
Yes. Okay.
So, I'm proposing that there should be a private sector standby composition.
Okay.
Let us look at this way. If you come to Ghana, the Ministry of Trade had technical working groups drawn from the various private sector. And what is their duty? Their role was to advise, jigjaw, come out with ideas, how government could implement the continental free trade.
Yes.
So they were drawn from every facet of the industry, so society. That technical working group is still standing, and it's very, very good initiative. It, after whatever they done, it was submitted to cabinet. After all the committees work and whatever we have the policy in place. So at the continental level, the state parties should work through their national AfCFTA offices. The national AfCFTA offices must compose standing committees, technical working groups, who can be, as the article is saying, so where you have the portion that say that as designated by state parties.
Yes.
So that portion of designating will be inference to the private sector technocrat or experts who are standing alongside the Council of Ministers, because one is of political direction, the other is of private sector direction.
Right.
And the two can work together, just as Mr. Wonder was talking about the African Business Council. But the African Business Council was formed to look at the business initiative. On the 2018, when AfCFTA was signed, the first Africa Business Forum was instituted.
Yes.
And it is stemming from this Africa Business Council. In coming March, they are going to have the Golden Africa Business Forum in South Africa. What is the purpose? Is to bring the private sector businesses that can move alongside. So once you're having that committee, we're proposing to have a private sector composed, drawn from the state parties too.
Right.
So that article must be reviewed. They can review it after 5 years. They can review it. In fact, the Council of Ministers can call for it. It needs to be reviewed.
Right.
Because it's always like the political leaders or political people go in for the discussion, then they come back to the private sector. No. I raised this thing alongside one of the, during those times when it was not yet AfCFTA. I raised it in one of the international conference. I said, listen, my opinion is that communication should not start from the top, from the down. Gather the people, get them involved right from the scratch. So it means that if these technocrats are involved, the private sector, they know what to make inputs.
Right.
They don't wait for you to come and tell them what you have decided. And then they'll say, we don't like it. Get them alongside. They be in the meeting. Get them observer status in your meetings.
Right.
The first phase of AfCFTA was done very well, where it was government and private sector involved. Now, phase 2, phase 3 is government to government. It's not good.
Right.
Get the private sector, give them not just observer status, but also to make sure that they make inputs in your decision. They make input into the reviews and reports. For example, if a private sector company says, I'm partnering with the AfCFTA Secretariat to ship goods, how will it be if such a person has a representative as an observer to the reports or the progressive report of the implementation process? You quickly say, look, yes, I'm doing the logistic side. I think that if we do this way, it could be. Then you take it from there, the committee meet, approve or disapprove, but at least they have been part right from the scratch. We can do that. Yes. And that's what we're proposing.
All right. That's Mr. Louis Awaful. He's the executive director of the AfCFTA Policy Network, APN, here in Ghana, and he's been at the forefront of championing this whole AfCFTA thing, and he's been with them throughout, from day one. Tonight we are discussing the role of the Council of Ministers, in the implementation of AfCFTA, coming on the heels of the resignation of Ghana's Trade Minister, the Honorable Alan Kojo-Kyerematen, that of Kenya, and then Nigeria, which he expects to happen pretty shortly, and how that would affect, the smooth and successful implementation of AfCFTA. We're going for a quick break. When we come back, we'll continue the discussion. Please do stay with us.
Every now and again, Goil makes good things happen. This time, Goil has introduced Super XP Ron 95, a higher grade fuel loaded with additives and yet sold at the same price as normal fuel. Go Super XP Ron 95 enhances engine performance like never before. It maintains the engine by keeping it clean from carbon deposits. Go Super XP Ron 95 is designed to burn slowly and thus improves fuel economy, making you save money after several kilometers. Go Super XP Run 95 gives you a smooth driving experience that is less vibrations. Fill up with Go Super XP Run 95. Now there's no need to pay more for any higher grade fuel. Goil has that sorted. Goil, good energy.
Electricity, then pay your taxes. Our taxes, our future.
Because you see, without our taxes, we wouldn't have good roads, good schools, better hospitals, street lights, and other very important social amenities. When we pay our taxes, we give our children free and quality education. Talga, my money too small. Why should I pay my tax? Look, small. Salifo, it doesn't matter how small or big your business or income is. You still have to pay your taxes. The little taxes from each and every one of us, when put together, could give your community clean water. Or that deprived school with tables and chairs. Please pay your taxes. It is your responsibility. It is your civic duty. It is the law.
Impressive factory. If only I had listened to you, I wouldn't have been in this mess. That devastating fire virtually wiped out the whole factory and my warehouse.
Remember my misfortunes last year? Serene Insurance Asset All Risk Fire policy that I took were there to pay for my damaged stocks in the warehouse. And my machines that were affected by the floods have been replaced. My accident vehicle is back on the road thanks to Serene Insurance motor policy. Currently, my goods are on the IC covered with their marine cargo insurance policy. I was just telling Ajima about Serene Insurance.
Oh, Ajima,
tell him more.
As a road contractor, I make sure I do my contractors all risk insurance for the projects and then workers' compensation for all the workers on site. With Serene Insurance, they will make sure they will cover your unknown tomorrow today.
Serene Insurance, a new face of insurance. Call us now.
MPS Terminal 3 is Africa's new state-of-the-art container terminal at Tema Port. For manufacturers, agro-processors and traders, the new port means business can be done faster. This infrastructure boost will improve Ghana's port handling capacity, connect more trading routes, and oil the engine of growth for the economy, creating greater opportunities across all sectors as Africa's markets merge and become the largest trading bloc globally. MPS, we connect, you thrive.
All right, so you're welcome back. We are discussing the role of the ministers, Council of Ministers in the implementation of AfCFTA, and with us in the studios, Mr. Louis Awaful, who is the Executive Director of the AfCFTA Policy Network, APN. Also joining us via Zoom is Mr. Justin Wendell Adi, who is also the Chairman of the Africa Private Sector Summit. Let me come to you, Mr. Wendell, and find out from you how you think that the private sector can be empowered to effectively participate in regional and sub-regional trade, particularly AfCFTA. And your organization, I understand, is championing what's called the Bill of Rights. Can you also tell us about it?
Thank you. The first step into empower the private sector is that the private sector itself has to recognize its role, all right, in terms of being the key stakeholder driver in the performance of any economy. Now, to do this, we need to dialogue with the government so that we have open communication in terms of a private sector and public sector relationship. That is key going forward. And we need to have this in place at the country level, at the regional level, and at the AU. This consultation process would enable what I would like to call a healthy relationship between the public sector and the private sector that will begin to accelerate the transformation of the African economies across the continent. Once it is done at a country level, the regional level, and so forth, it should not, the relationship between government and the private sector should not be an afterthought. It should be a hand-in-hand, walking together to make things happen. And I often make a statement that, and maybe I get into trouble for it, but I believe strongly AfCFTA cannot survive without a healthy, vibrant private sector. And this is what brings into play the private sector Bill of Rights. All right? And one has to now look at the private sector Bill of Rights as a complementary companion document to AfCFTA. And basically, there's nothing new we're talking about in the private sector Bill of Rights. What we're talking about basically have already been adopted in the protocols of the Rex and the private and the AfCFTA. The issue of free movement is a AfCFTA stroke Rex document. Currency at the very inception of setting up the OAU, now African Union, they talk about common currency. They talk about free movement of people. So what we've tried to do is say, fine, you've given us this document. We thank you, government. We thank you for our leaders for giving us this AfCFTA document. All right? We believe in it. We believe it can transform the continent. But we need to have certain things in place. Right. You have signed off on all of these things. Let us now agree that they will be implemented. Let us agree the movement of people will be implemented. Let us agree that common currency will be implemented. Let us agree that all of the necessary things, infrastructure, good governance, rule of law, all of these things are part of what we are requesting as part of the Bill of Rights for an enabling business environment in Africa. And once we have this and implement them, all right, then things would happen almost automatically. Then the brain drain that we're experiencing will be returned to the continent.
Right.
Africa will be very independent. Okay? You have maybe 45, 44 in terms of gold reserve, all right, on the continent of Africa. You have maybe about the same category of maybe 50% of your natural resource on the continent. Why are you so poor? Let us forget about the ills of yesterday. We know better today. So let's move forward. Now, to make the private sector from, we have to come together at the country level, all right, at the regional level, at the AU level. We have a giving. We have two givings at the AU level. We have, so to speak, we have the Pan-African Chamber of Commerce, and we have the African Business Council. The African Business Council is the apex body. Then you have the regional bodies. Then you have the national bodies, okay? The Chamber of Commerce and all of the other business associations. You know, we are conflicted because we have a problem. Technically, the Chamber of Commerce, all right, when it comes to your rule of business transactions, the documents are all prepared by the Chamber of Commerce. We have to recognize the rule, okay? Every document pertaining to shipping, pertaining to finance, pertaining to business transaction, business laws, originate from the Chamber of Commerce. All right?
Right.
So how do we, at the country level, bring all of these parties together? In like Ghana, for example, you have AGI, you have the Chamber of Commerce, you have a trade association, and so forth. How do you bring them together so that they speak with one voice with your government? Okay, and then translate that to the regional body, and then translate that to the apex body, African Business Council. In the absence of us uniting, this is where our failure comes into play. Right. And we need to put our differences, okay, look at the ultimate objective for a strong, healthy, vibrant economy, not just for your country, but for the region and for the continent. Right. So that together we speak with one voice at the AU.
All right.
Who pays the bills? All of these meetings, who pays the bills? Tell me, you answer. Your organization, though you're quasi-government owned, but who pays the bill?
Right.
If we don't, you are a private sector entity, so to speak. You pay taxes to government. So let us look at this mutual understanding, this love-fest relationship, all right? It's a marriage between the private sector and the government. We would disagree, but let us agree on those salient issues to move forward.
Right.
It's a gift to the private sector. If we fail to take advantage of the opportunities under AfCFTA, we will remain fragmented and will continue to have the exploitation that we experienced in the past.
All right. I'll come back to you for you to tell us what the Bill of Rights your organization is championing is all about. But let me come to Louise. Before I come to Louise, let me announce that the production team has told me we can activate the phone lines for you to call in and contribute to the discussion. The number to dial is 020-552-8353. It's rolling on your screen. 020-552-8353. You can call in and contribute to the discussion. Now, would you want to walk us through some of the, the things that or the successes that some of these ministers have chalked, particularly our, Minister Alan Kojic, what he did, in terms of championing this whole AfCFTA thing, and perhaps the others. Just briefly, because we don't have a lot of time on our
think
hands.
the first one is enabling the national AfCFTA policy framework.
Right.
So we have a policy. The second, at least, under his tenure, Ghana was able to His Excellency the President to secure Ghana hosting the Secretariat. Ghana also is implementing the 7 clusters that, under his supervision, was launched. Trade-related infrastructure, trade finance, and a critical one is the 1D1F issues that is ongoing, which will be very, very good to see it's really expanded, and then especially the export.
Right.
The export policy that was developed, the development agenda is very, very important. Then also, I think the area of looking at the expanding the industrial parks.
Right. Yes.
So I think that those are very critical ones in Ghana and many others. Then I think also his ability that he was able to really work closely with other ministerial committees. To ensure that Ghana was always ahead, especially bringing the Secretariat activities close. In fact, the Ghana National AfCFTA Office is also a very important achievement. Okay. Other countries don't have their AfCFTA because you realize that their members keep asking, when is AfCFTA coming here? Every member party state should have a national coordinating AfCFTA office. We have ours, and that is bringing the private sector. It's playing the role of liaison between the Secretariat and then the citizens and then the private sector.
Dr. Farid.
Where Dr. Farid is being the coordinator.
Yes.
If we take Kenya, the same. Honorable Maina has worked extensively, especially Kenya's ability to really expand on their sensitization to rural communities and involve them in AfCFTA.
Right.
And then also, recently, they actively played a role in the expanded guided trade.
Yes, initiative. Yeah.
And they've not stopped. And it continues. For Nigeria, I think that they saw Nigeria becoming a full state party when they were not in 2020. So I urge whoever is going to take over that they should continue it aggressively. They should continue. They should consult the technocrats who are there.
Right.
That where did the minister leave or take off? Where did he stop? Let's continue from there. We should not initiate certain new things that are going to derail the advancement of so far what these ministers have done. This is what I think will be good for us.
All right, great. So let me come to Mr. Wendell and find out from you what the Bill of Rights, your organization, that's the Africa Private Sector Summit, is championing. It's all about.
Simply stated, it is about an enabling business environment, an enabling business environment in Africa. To do business in Africa, we have to graduate from the way we did things in the past. We have to look at our natural resources. We'll have to look at our overall resources. How can we harness the resources in the interests of the continent? How can we provide the environment to facilitate the harnessing of these activities? Business. What is your business climate? When a person looking to invest in a country, they look at certain basic things: rule of law, security, access to finance. These are the basic things. So, in a nutshell, it includes everything that AfCFTA protocol calls for about in terms of trade facilitation. We're talking about free movement of people. Should not be required to obtain a visa to go to South Africa, for that matter. All right. I should not. I should have access to financing to do business. All right. It should not be a hassle. All right. Now, in particular here, I like to make reference to the Africa Trade Insurance. That is another spin-off of the African Union.
Right.
That organization was established purposely to provide trade and insurance coverage, trade and investment coverage, insurance for doing business in Africa. Unfortunately, most people don't know anything about this organization. Incidentally, they had a conference in the General Assembly in Ghana last year. 90% of your businesses, I would say 98% of your businesses.
I think we've lost Mr. Wendell via Zoom. Let me come into the studios. I think there are a few messages here I would like to take. And this one says, my name is Fifi. Has Ghana made some headway in the implementation of the National Policy Action Plan? I would like to know.
Yes. Yes. If you look at the trade-related infrastructure, connected infrastructure that is needed to enable, especially if you look at the railway development was supposed to end at Paga.
Right.
But because of the AfCFTA vision, it's being expanded to Burkina.
Right.
You and I know the port, how far you've gone. Yeah. Then the mainland port, inland port that is also under, is very important.
Yes.
Again, if you look at the area of, in terms of ICT, recently realized that the Ghana launched a program, I think, under the Ministry of Communication. I've forgotten the digital something.
Right. The digital center?
A hub.
Yeah,
a hub,
digital hub, yeah.
Purposely for AfCFTA.
Right.
Then again, if you look at trade-related, in terms of finance, that area, more needs to be done. But that one, you realize that the Ghana Exim Bank has what we call every month, they have what we call the Tuesday promoting made in Ghana and made in Africa products kind of market, where they ask people to come and sell. You know, so Ghana has done a lot for Ghana, but there's still more room back in terms of the AfCFTA,
yes,
especially with the Ghana National AfCFTA Office.
Yes,
I'm sure they received some support recently from the World Bank, and they are going to put more effort by utilizing that resources, because they have been holding regional capacity building for all and sundry.
Yes.
Then again, we are one of the biggest achievement Ghana have done so far is the ports. If you look at the single with the window,
single window,
the icons.
Yeah, sure,
yeah. We have special AfCFTA codes.
Yes, in that system. Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Other countries don't have.
They don't. Yeah.
Because without that, how are you able to determine that this product is an AfCFTA product?
Yeah.
And that is the difficulty AfCFTA is facing.
Right.
What is the difference between this product I used to trade and the one that you say is an AfCFTA product?
Right.
So that is one of the critical areas that I think that with them.
All right. I understand Mr. Wendell is back on the line. Hello, sir.
I'm back.
Yes, great. Okay, so there's a question here for you. It says, my name is Ben. Who have they approached so far with their Bill of Rights, and who do they intend to approach in the future? What has been the reception so far?
Well, the reception, I was at the launch of the Ghana AfCFTA program, and Minister Allen spoke. I asked the question whether the government be receptive to it, and he said they'll be glad to take a look at it. We have all the way at the AU. I was at a conference recently in Tangier on peace and security, and where I stated that there was nothing new being discussed at that peace and security conference, and we needed something that would work, and that we should leave that conference with a headline news that would carry the private sector has requested a Bill of Rights. Fortunately for us, the Commissioner of Trade, Ambassador Mushunga, made in his closing remark indicated that the private sector has requested a private sector Bill of Rights for an enabling business environment. We have the PATSI, the Pan-African Chamber of Commerce, has distributed it across to all of the Chamber of Commerce across the continent. We have engaged a number of other business associations to be able to work with their members. For example, the Abuja Chamber of Commerce, in the last 2 days, told me that they will be holding a roundtable conference with their members to discuss the private sector Bill of Rights. We hope that the Chamber of Commerce, the AGI, and other organizations in Ghana would do the same thing.
Right.
All right. But the exercise is now a vetting process. We will be meeting in March 23, 2025 in Kigali, where we will be, all the businesses are invited to participate in the vetting process of the Bill of Rights. Then in October 20 to November 2, that's the tentative date that the government, the president, I understand, is available, that will be meeting in that country to validate the Bill of Rights.
Okay.
And then step is to turn it over to all of the participants will then take it back to the respective countries to engage the national governments, okay, so that when it comes up at the AU, a Heads of State Summit in February of 2024,
yes,
we're praying that it will be adopted, all right, as one of the instruments that will accelerate the implementation of the AfCFTA. So we putting it out there as a complementary companion document of the AfCFTA to accelerate implementation of AfCFTA. And this is what the private sector wants. The private sector wants peace and security. The private sector wants infrastructure. The private sector wants an African Educational Trust Fund that will revamp the education system to meet the skill sets needs of the continent. The private sector wants access to credit. So, okay. And one of the things that we're talking about is that let's begin to look at the role of the central bank at the country level in a more constructive and engaging way with the commercial banks that would take advantage of accelerating opportunities with the focus area of AfCFTA. Those focus areas of AfCFTA happens to be agriculture, manufacturing, ICT, and a few others. But if we, for example, this is something that we hope that will be coming up at the conference in Rwanda. All right, we're looking at coming to address this issue of access to finance.
Right.
It can be done, and all right. So we think we can structure a gated arrangement with the ATI, the African Trade Insurance Body, where national bodies at the country level will stand in and coordinate activities for the SMEs, where we can say, for example, Ghana.
Yes.
Ghana, we can provide maybe say $10, $20, $30 million for SMEs, but it's done through the national body, all right, because the banks do not know how to reach all of these small people. So these are the things that we're working out. We think that there's something can be structured along that line. We're actively working with PATSI, and we're trying to get the National Chambers of Commerce and other business houses. Now, I'm not limited. I'm a chamber man. I'm a former president of the Chamber of Commerce of Liberia.
Right.
So if you mention the name chamber, so forth, because some organizations take exception. You mentioned chamber.
Yes.
But in reality, chamber happens to be the one that provide the key transactional documents for the private sector,
right.
like it or not,
right.
so forth. So these are the things that we're trying to do. We're encouraging people to come to the conference. Let your be heard, okay, in terms of the recommendations. It's going to be a small pamphlet that should come up as a private sector bill of rights. But if AfCFTA is to work, we need to have these things in place.
Absolutely.
So that we can accelerate Africa's transformation, Africa's development in a shorter path. Look, I believe very firmly from the depth of my heart that if we can put this structure into place and get the central bank, work with the ATI people involved, okay, those details we can explain later on.
Yeah.
But we can put this in place. Africa can become self-sufficient in food within 3 years.
Great. Okay.
And I'm specific reference to it happening in Nigeria when they had the maize problem back in the 80s under the leadership of Babangida. Within 3, even the program was for 5 years. In 3 years, became self-sufficient in maize.
Great.
Issue of continuity. What happened thereafter? It fell apart. Okay. Since the Ukraine incident and the challenges being raised, the Rwanda has come up with a position. It says it has invested, or it is investing $1 billion to become self-sufficient by 2025.
Right.
That the kinds of statement we want to hear from the African leaders.
Great. Well, points well made, Mr. Wendell. I think we are running out of time. We appreciate you deeply. He is the chairman of the Africa, Private Sector Summit. He's been speaking to us on the particular topic that we are treating this afternoon. That's the role of the Council of Ministers in the implementation of AfCFTA. We are deeply grateful to you, Mr. Wendell, for joining us all the way from the United States of America. Thank you very much indeed. We are deeply, deeply grateful. Let me come back in studio and then conclude with Mr. Louis Afful, who is the Executive Director of the Africa AfCFTA Policy Network. APN. There's this one who says, my name is Tan. Mr. Host, my problem is I can hear a lot of paperwork and discussions, but are we really trading and AfCFTA as African people?
I think it's yes and no. Yes, some countries, effective volume of trade have not yet really commenced. But some initiatives, especially also within the service sector and AfCFTA, it's ongoing. And I think that this year we need to really exhaust all that we need to do to make sure that a lot of goods are being traded. That can happen when grappling companies are supported by state parties. That can happen when all barriers that we say we want to remove are removed. That can happen when the borders are opened. That can happen when whole custom systems are cooperating. Because the article says custom cooperation and management. If customs don't cooperate, traders will see it as a normal day of doing business. Customs cooperate. They can even orient traders that, look, we have something we call AfCFTA products and non-AfCFTA products. And then also, I think that we can also see more daylight if we keep on, the media keeps supporting, like you are doing, the sensitization. We are not there yet. I tell you, sensitization is still a long way to go. We need to continue sensitization and capacity building, meeting physically or digitally all the stakeholders who are supposed to be involved. It is not only for traders. AfCFTA is not only for traders. It is even for those who have potential interest in going into business. It is not only for goods, it's also for those who are interested in services. I really wanted to run something for you. Just a quick one. If you take, for example, what we call, if you take tourism, these are people who can come under tourism, air transport service, maritime, internal waterways, air transport, space transport, rail, road transport, pipeline transport, services. Again, if you take tourism, If you take communication, you have postal services, courier services, telecommunication,
Yes.
audiovisuals.
Yeah.
Then, if you come down to financial services, have all insurance.
Yes.
And insurance-related services, banking, and other finance. Then the tourism, for example, I wanted to mention tourism, because Ghana seems to have a lot of tourism. Tourism, you have hotels, you have restaurants, you have tour guides,
Hospitality
all
industry,
these
yeah, sure.
opportunities. So you don't need to wait for anybody to come and tell you. Once you identify which area you want to go, whether services or products,
Yes.
then you go to the appropriate authority. You can contact us. APN can help you to identify where you want to go. Or you go to the Ministry of Trade, or you go to the National Office. They can help you so that you can be able to take opportunity of this.
All right. I think there's a follow-up question, but we don't have enough time.
Yes,
it says, why are borders still not opened in some countries?
Probably security reasons.
Just that. Okay. All right. So I think that this is how we will end it. We draw the curtain on this week's edition of Our Report here on Metropolitan Television. Remember, we've been looking at the role of the Council of Ministers in the implementation of the Africa Continental Free Trade Area. And with me in the studios has been Mr. Louis Afo, Executive Director, After Policy Network, APN. Remember, we also were joined via Zoom by Mr. Jackson Wendell Addy, who is the chairman of the Africa Private Sector Summit. I would like to say a big thanks to our sponsors, Ghana Revenue Authority, Goyle Company Limited, Serene Insurance, Ghana Link Network Services, and Meridian Port Services. And indeed, remember, the show is proudly powered by the Ghana Ports and Harbours Authority. The abridged version will be aired on Wednesday at 8:30 p.m. on Ghana Television. Make a date and watch that. My name is Kennedy Mona. God willing, next week we shall bounce back with another wonderful edition of the show. We wish you a super week ahead and wish you God's blessings. Keep watching the rest of our programs here on Metro TV. Good evening.